Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2. So I know that a lot of you aren't particularly interested in making a build at the moment because of the changes that are going to come out within the next few weeks, and you're kind of worried that any build that you'll make will just get nerfed and you'll have to refarm anyways. Well, fear not, today I have a build that is not only one of the best, if not the best builds that I've made so far for the current patch, but it will actually be not only nerf proof, meaning that it will be almost completely unaffected by the new patch, but it will also most likely actually be stronger when the new update comes out because of how much extra armor you can potentially get. Additionally, I think that patch is at the very least 3 weeks down the road, so I still think it's worth making the build for now if you want something to play with. That's pretty simple to set up, and you can use any gun with as well. I made this build with all of the recent changes in mind, and I also made sure to explain a few of those changes within the video, and I also am going to go over a couple different combinations of the build and how to get the most damage out of it possible within the video, so I'd highly recommend watching the full thing so you don't leave the video being misinformed and not knowing how to properly set it up. Regardless though, as you can tell, this build is absolutely insane. I'm able to dish out tons of damage, easily well over 2 million DPS, while still retaining a good amount of survivability. As you can see, I'm using an LMG within the video. That's just because I have yet to make a build with an LMG this patch, but you can use any gun you want with this build and it'll still function fantastically, if not potentially better. And I of course will explain how to set it up with other guns within the video as well. Good thing about this build is that it is much more casual friendly than my other builds, as it's very simple to set up. It doesn't require god roll pieces to make work. You can use almost any pieces of gear and make it functional, and it doesn't utilize on the ropes either, so it doesn't feel like a nuisance while you're playing. If you'd like to see some more gameplay of this build, I'll leave some gameplay at the end of the video of me doing a challenging bounty at level 3 control point and some Darkstone gameplay. But if you want to see the AR version or the rifle version of this build in action, I stream every single day over on Twitch, and I will be using this as my main build from now on, most likely with an AR, so feel free to check me out at twitch.tv/nick2 if you're interested in that. Also, just want to quickly mention that I'm going to start using Twitter again, and we'll probably be doing exclusive giveaways over there, and of course we'll be using it to share my opinion, giving helpful tidbits of information, interacting with you guys, etc, etc. So please feel free to follow me on Twitter at Nick2YT, and I'd appreciate it a ton. Anyways, let's get right into the build. Alright guys, starting out, like always, Specialist, Sharpshooter, headshot damage, reload speed, stability, and accuracy. Pretty much run this almost no matter what build I'm using. If you want to use an AR, you can go Survivalist if you want. Maybe you can go Demolitionist for LMG. I just like the reload speed and the headshot damage. Yeah, pretty simple. In terms of the build itself, like I said, I wanted to make sure that it was going to be nerf proof and still very strong after the patch hits. So I made a lot of changes. It's basically the on the ropes build with 577 with unstoppable force and stuff. If you, instead of going for on the ropes, you go for just pure red attributes. Now, this isn't a very good representation of the build because, like, my rifle build, for example, I have like 9 offensive attributes. It doesn't actually show the attributes unless I swap. I have like 9 offensive attributes on that build. The reason that I only have 6 here is just that's kind of what happened, but I still ended up getting more damage than I would have with having on the ropes on, and I'll show you guys how to do that. But I decided to ditch on the ropes because not only is it's not super high maintenance, but it's just kind of a nuisance. It's just kind of annoying, right, to play with. But additionally, it's easier to make a build that doesn't rely on it. And on top of that, certain gun talents, like the talent Ranger, when using like a rifle or something, you can't use with on the ropes. But also, you can get actually more damage without using it if you set up the build properly than you would with having it. The reason being is because if you're spending a lot of your attributes on your certain, gear pieces and whatever, or going for certain brands to make sure that you have enough attributes to reach the 7 for on the ropes, you end up sacrificing a lot of potential damage elsewhere, and maybe brands at combinations as well. The build I have now, with the way that I have it set up, it still did perform better than the on the ropes version of this build that I had, even though that I only have 6 red attributes, whereas the main benefit for not using on the ropes is that you don't have to only sit at 5 red. You can go for 10 red or something if you want. The only thing there is that, like, with an AR or something, you lose the talent Optimist, and then you'd probably go for like Ranger or something else here. But if you really want to use the talent Optimist, or you want to use like the talent Safeguard in your backpack, you can still sit at around 5 red attributes and as long as you reallocate elsewhere, maybe going more into defensive to get more benefit out of Unstoppable Force, it's still very strong though. So the biggest thing with this build is pretty much just stacking as much weapon damage as you can while making sure that you have Unstoppable Force up. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Unstoppable Force is getting nerfed in the new update. That is true, but you know what? We're also getting way more armor in the new update. With this same build that I would have right now, with a little bit of modifications, I could have well over 350k armor. I did this on the PTS, I'll show some screenshots right now, because you can get percentage armor and flat armor on the same piece, and the flat armor rolls are way higher than they used to be. So you can get upwards of 350k, probably even more with a min-max build, probably well over 380k, which means that you're still getting a huge value out of Unstoppable Force. At the very least, you're getting like 30% weapon damage, which is still way more damage than any other talent on the chest is going to give you, and it's still definitely worth going for Unstoppable Force to do this. And I mean, the thing is that you don't only use Unstoppable Force for damage, right? You do use it because you're getting armor, and as much as people want to say, oh, survivability doesn't really matter, having extra armor doesn't really matter, I have 350 hours in this game. When I put on a build that has 250k armor versus a build that has 170k armor, I notice a big difference. So trust me when I say there's a big difference between having low armor and high armor, and it's going to be even more beneficial when the update hits, because you're going to have such a higher health pool that you're going to be almost invincible in PvE, which is insane. And another thing that I made sure to do with this build is that one of the benefits of having On the Ropes is kind of an inadvertent benefit, I guess, is since you're stacking so much utility, you end up getting a lot of skill power, right? Which means that you can make your chem launcher pretty beefy. So to kind of accommodate for that, I did my best and I got a pretty good amount of skill power. You could actually get way more if you tried harder to do this. If I were to use a different backpack, let's say like a Providence backpack, to get extra skill power from the set bonus here, and then maybe I had it, yeah, like a backpack exactly like this one actually. If I had it with, you know, skill power and the other rolls that I needed, as well as the 10% bonus there, and then I went skill power more like on my utility mod slots and had more skill power, I could have well over 2,000 skill power here and make my chem launcher even better. At the moment I have 1,600 chem launcher skill power, which is getting me some pretty decent mods here. Overall about like extra 50% healing. I actually didn't have the right one on. Almost 50% extra healing, which is a big difference. I wouldn't recommend going for ammo anymore, because in the new update, you're not going to be able to just put a chem launcher down and then put a second one down and have the healing stack. So instead of going for extra ammo or something, you'd much rather just be able to put one heal down and that suffice for the time being. So you'd rather just have huge health percentages there, so that when you put one down, the HPS is really big. But of course, if you don't want to go for skill power, you definitely don't have to. There's a lot of different ways that you can set this up, but first off, let's just talk about the gun. Like I said, you can set this up with pretty much any gun you want. If you want to do an AR, you can do it. If you wanted an LMG, you can do it like I have it. If you want to do a rifle, you can do it. I have actually a rifle version of this build, so feel free to check that out. It's my solo build. I made it a little bit different, but pretty much the same premise there. But yeah, the only thing you'd have to swap out is probably the chest piece, and then you just have to redistribute some of the attribute rolls, because different chest pieces get different attribute rolls, right? So you just have to figure that out. But if you want to use an AR, just slap on a Fenner's chest, move some pieces around, and you're good to go. But yeah, let's just talk about weapons, and then we'll talk about every individual role that I have, and maybe a couple different combinations that you could do with the build. So for my gun, I'm running an M60 because I wanted to use an LMG. I'm going for Unhinged. The only other talent that I would see that's like super good for damage is going to be Optimist here. Optimist is very strong, but of course I'm over 5, and Unhinged is actually kind of getting buff / nerfed. So it's going to be 20% weapon damage, but at the cost of minus 25% handling. Honestly, I would actually take that as a buff, because the handling that you get from this makes it to where you want to use a talent like Optimize to get more handling, and then you actually like to get accuracy like on your gear, such as getting a Raldi or maybe like DNH pieces, right? So getting more weapon handling and only losing 5% damage as a result, I'm actually not too mad about. It's not too bad of a trade-off there, and even then, it's still definitely the best talent in the game. I mean, 20% weapon damage is huge, especially because you can compensate for it pretty easily. I went for Optimize here just for more accuracy, as the accuracy is a little rough when you get Unhinged on here, but you could go Allegro or something. If you're running an AR, instead of Unhinged, you could go with, I have an AK here that I put Ranger on. I did the same thing on an MK17. You could also go for Breadbasket. That's a pretty decent one, especially if you are on console, because the more body shots you do, the more headshot damage you get. So pretty helpful there as well. And then for the second talent, I just go for like Allegro or Optimize or something. Just real quickly, the way that I modded it, I have a 3.4 times scope so that I gain the holstered benefit from Nemesis. Got a reload speed there. You could go rate of fire, up to you. I just like the reload speed. For my grip, I went accuracy. That's kind of a must. And then for muzzle, I have damage to elites. You could go accuracy as well, though. And as you can see, I have an M60 with some pretty big dick base damage here. But if you want to use an M249 for the additional accuracy, feel free. M249 is very strong. In some cases, I actually prefer it. But, you know, my monkey brain tells me that M60 is more fun to use because I like seeing bigger numbers. But yeah, you can use pretty much anything you want there. But like I said, using a Nemesis for the holster talent, if you're using an AR or even with an LMG, you can still use a Chatterbox for the extra rate of fire. That's a ton of fun. But for me, I just like to have more consistent damage as opposed to bursts of additional damage. And with an M60, I don't really like reloading all that much, so I'd much rather just use Nemesis for overall damage. But with an AR, using Chatterbox for Blabbermouth is amazing. But yeah, that's pretty much what you'd want to do there in terms of guns. And you could also run an MK or something if you want to run a rifle. So getting into individual roles, I wouldn't worry too much about brand sets with this build. It's pretty easy to kind of integrate whatever brand sets you want, considering you're not restricted to a 5-7-7 setup. You can go 6-7-4, you can go 10-7-1, 8-7-0. You can do a million different combinations with this build. Like, look at my rifle build. It's way different 9-7-1 than it is with my LMG build. So yeah, you can pretty much do whatever you want there. That actually messed up a couple of my pieces, so that's unlucky. Let me fix that real quick. All right, back to normal. So yeah, you can use any brand sets that you want. For me, I'm running a Gila mask at the moment. Like I said, use whatever brand set you want. The reason that I chose to run a Gila mask is because hazard protection is actually hugely underrated, and it's pretty nice. Additionally, mine has pretty high damage to elites, and I needed this blue here in order to get the 7 defensive anyway, so I decided it was worth running. For the talent, you want hard hitting, but you definitely want to get damage to elites here. That's just huge extra damage. But also, I'm not really losing much damage running this because I get a 3.5% headshot damage on my utility mod here, because I have a generic one, which is really good. But yeah, hazard protection, guys, if you don't know, it's actually really strong. It helps again a bunch against getting grenaded or gas or anything like that. Anything that applies a status effect onto you, like fire, stuff like that, it helps out a huge amount having just a little bit of this. So getting 33% is a pretty big deal there. I could run my Wyvern Mask instead. It just has like really high damage to elites. Main thing here is just get one with high damage to elites. You don't have to run Gila if you don't want to. Not a big deal there. I'm not running any crits, so I don't really care about the brand set there. For my chest piece here, went for Petrov since I'm running LMG. Mine isn't great. I have skill power, armor, headshot damage, and weapon damage. I would recommend trying to get 2 reds on your chest piece. Maybe if I was running Fenris, I would try to have a chest piece like this where I have armor, headshot damage, and weapon damage. Even though headshot damage isn't a huge amount of extra damage there, it's still probably better than having skill power because you don't really need the skill power, but I guess if you want to run that, you can. A chest piece like my Overlord one as well is super strong, or you could decide to go for 2 blue on your chest piece, kind of like this one is, so that it's easier to get to 7 for Unstoppable Force there, and then you could get another red somewhere else, you know. But main thing is just to get weapon damage there and maybe headshot damage. Petrov is always going to roll skill power, so I'm kind of stuck with that there. For the talent, Unstoppable Force is definitely what you want to do. If you're running Fenris, you could get, you know, Unstoppable Force and hard hitting, or you could get hardened as well. And then for the generic mod here, I have this one is actually insane, which is why you can't tell that my damage is actually really good, even not going for on the ropes, is because with on the ropes, I wouldn't have this kind of with the way that I set it up. I wouldn't have this generic mod here where I get 5% extra LMG damage. But when the new update comes out, I'll probably, instead of going for headshot damage here, I'll go for bonus armor, and then there's a percentage bonus armor, like 10%. I'll probably end up doing that. And another thing that you can do is, if you want to run LMG, you can still run a Fenris chest so that you can get double talents, or if you're running rifle, you can do this as well. You can run a Fenris chest so that you can get double talents, and then you could run a Petrov backpack, or in the case of a rifle, Overlord gloves, so that you could get the extra LMG damage or respective rifle damage on, as well as having double talents there. But main thing is just getting weapon damage on your chest piece and then some armor, so that your feeds into Unstoppable Force. For the holster here, I decided to go for skill power just because I want to have a pretty beefy chem launcher, which is why I decided to go for D&H. Accuracy is also pretty nice here. Instead of going for skill power though, you can easily go for crit chance or something like that. One big takeaway from this is that offensive mods actually give you a huge amount of additional damage. If I were not using DNH, I'd probably go for an R&K holster, and instead of going for skill power, I'd probably go for the crit chance, just a little bit of extra damage. But the thing that's really good about R&K, not only am I getting some survivability from hazard protection, but R&K is the only holster, at least to my knowledge, that has an offensive system, which means that technically I could get 6.5% extra weapon damage out of this, while still getting pretty much everything else that I would want, which is a pretty big deal. But like I said, with my build, I wanted to have a pretty good chem launcher, so I decided to sacrifice that. But if I got an R&K holster that rolled skill power, I'd probably roll it. For the talents, devastating or precise, up to you. For the backpack, I actually could have a better one. I should mention, by the way, I am running a Raldi. Reason being, extra accuracy is huge with an LMG, and I am getting headshot damage here. If you're running an AR, you probably don't want to go with this. You'd probably be better off going for like Gila, so that you get extra rolls here, so that you can get more offensive stats somewhere else, stuff like that. But for me, I have a Raldi because I have pretty high headshot damage or weapon damage roll here. I have armor here, and then I've got hard hitting as a talent, and then I have a pretty good offensive system mod. On the backpack, you definitely want to have 2 red attributes in total, meaning 1 from the base attribute and then 1 offensive system mod. Those are going to give you huge damage boost, more so than anything else would. If you're running crit, you could decide to go for crit damage as well as weapon damage, but make sure to definitely prioritize the weapon damage there. If you, in a perfect world, I would actually have hard hitting and another talent here being hardened if I had a better backpack that were to have 2 passive. You can do that on Alps, you can do that on 511, and you can do that on Wyvern. I just don't have the right backpack for that, but if you do, power to you. That's pretty strong. Or if you're running 5, you could still run Safeguard. They actually kind of reverted the buff or the nerf a little bit, so Safeguard will still be decent. It won't be great, but it'll be okay, especially in a solo context. So if you like going for Safeguard, it's a free talent pickup if you're running 5 under already. I could easily do that with this build if I wanted to. For the gloves here, there's a lot of different glove combinations that you could do. Like I said, I went Noraldi. I might actually go Alps if I get one that has LMG damage. So the thing about Alps is you can get an offensive protocol mod slot, and you can get upwards of like 5% weapon damage here, which would be very good. But main thing on the gloves, you just want to get LMG damage as well as a talent. Gila gloves are pretty decent as well because they give you a blue attribute and a utility mod slot. So if you're trying to go for extra skill power here or something, and you want the extra blue roll to help you get in supple force, you can do that as well. Make sure to go for devastating or precise in the talent there. And then for the knee pads, I pretty much always run Gila. In some situations, you can run other things. Overlord knee pads can be good if you're trying to run a rifle build, or if you don't need the red roll here, you could go for a different pair of knee pads, such as like Providence or something. Get yourself a little bit of skill power. You could roll armor here, still get hard hitting, and then you can get an offensive protocol mod slot here instead of going for defensive. But I like to have the extra armor, and I like having the protocol mod slot as well because it gets me 4% headshot damage, but it also counts towards the total of 7 here, which helps me out a lot. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the build. We can go over my stats real quick to show you that it's actually still very good in terms of overall numbers. So crit chance is 0, not sagging crit because crit doesn't get me very much damage, 20 crit damage, whatever, but I have 114 headshot, which is really good, a 50% reload speed bonus in total. I don't even remember where all that's coming from, but that's great, I guess. Oh, it's my mag and then sharpshooter. So yeah, that's pretty big for LMG. And then look, 50% all weapon damage bonus, 30% LMG damage bonus, 91% damage to elites, and 1% armor. That's where all my damage is coming. And not to mention, I also have unstoppable force, right? So yeah, I'm getting a lot of extra damage there. I mean, the gameplay speaks for itself. Build is insane for doing just a shitload of damage, and I think it will actually be better when the update drops. In terms of skills you'd want to use, I'd probably run Chem Launcher, like I said, just for the really strong heal. But in terms of my other skill, since I don't really care about throwing things on cooldown, since I'm not running on the ropes, I decided to run a drone just for free healing. You could decide to run a shield or something. If you want to use a Crusader shield, you can definitely do that so that you can throw on the scope. That gives you extra headshot damage, and then you could run the Crusader shield and just run around doing a shitload of damage. You could do that as well. You could probably be critting for well over 300k with an AR if you were to do that. Or you could run, like, I don't know, Pulse or something like that if you wanted to run Spotter. Actually, come to think of it, you could unlock Spotter with this build technically. You would have very high uptime on Spotter, but technically speaking, you could. I mean, all I'd have to do is get one more utility. I just have to swap out, you know, Araldi for Gila, get utility here, and then boom, put on Spotter here for extra weapon damage while I have enemies pulsed. That could be pretty good, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. I'm going to leave some gameplay here so you can see how powerful the build is, but yeah, if you enjoyed, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe for videos similar to this one. Feel free to follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Nick2 and follow me on Twitter at Nick2YT. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later. Peace.
Reinforcements en route. Detecting additional hostile contacts. Hostile supply convoy nearby. Supply room.
I got this one. Trying to hook around us.
your target.